Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well. Have I got a bonus upload that the information that I'm going to share with you is so fascinating that I literally printed the articles out so I could keep them and, reread them and re-research them because it's just unbelievably fascinating, as well as terrifying. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they do matter. Now, everyone, I've taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into this bonus upload, shall we? Well, tonight I've got some information that I really hope you find fascinating, because I do, and I want to share it with you. So let's get into this, because this is pretty intense. It's definitely creepy and very educational. Hyperdimensional entities have been recognized, discussed, and warned about for literally a millennia throughout the history of humanity. Naturally, there are many people who scoff at the very idea of such beings, believing them to be fictitious inventions of the human mind. However, the fact that so many cultures, traditions, religions, and spiritualities have discussed the nature of these creatures, using different terms but essentially describing the same thing, gives credence to the idea that they exist. We have been cautioned for millennia that humanity is under a psychic attack by a group of energetic, discarnate beings that seed thoughts of judgment, separation, anxiety, anger, and fear in order to generate louche, negative emotional energy that they siphon off as food. In searching for what force is really behind the construction of the New World Order and the Gander conspiracy, one is bound to investigate these hyperdimensional entities, who may be the original handlers, puppet masters, and mind control perpetrators manipulating the whole of mankind, beyond the frequency band of normal perception. We have to take seriously the idea that the hidden rulers of the crazy world are invisible, or at least operate from frequencies beyond normal perception. After all, no one knows exactly where thoughts originate. If there were a force that could control which thoughts are being beamed into the mind, then every single living person would be vulnerable to psychic attack. These hyperdimensional entities are said to be able to infiltrate your mind, make their voice sound like yours, and entice you to do their bidding, all with the aim of generating fear, which is their food. Are they the gods of yore that demanded sacrifice? Are they evil spirits that possess people? Are they the masters of trickery who continually try to keep us in fear and out of our center of power, our heart? What follows is a list of 10 different traditions and cultures that describe these hyperdimensional entities using their own terms and ideas. Hyperdimensional entities, the archons, or the Gnostics. The ancient Gnostics are named after Gnosis, the Greek word for knowledge or insight. Gnosticism is a loosely organized religious and philosophical movement that flourished in the 1st and 2nd century AD. The Gnostics believed that the material world was a result of a primordial error on the part of the divine being, usually called Sophia, wisdom, or the Logos. They attributed the creation and control of the material world to a semi-divine, ignorant creature known who was called Saklas, the fool, or Luldaboth, the blind god, the demiurge, from the Greek demiurgos, which means craftsman, but which the Gnostics meant as an architect or lesser creative force. The Gnostic mythology / cosmology, both Sophia and the demiurge are subordinate to the supreme being / cosmos, or God. The demiurge was antagonistic to anything spiritual and had a group of servants known as the archons, Greek meaning ruler. The research of Gnostic scholar John Lash reveals that the Gnostics were early mystic shamans who reached high states of consciousness, knew their direct connection with the cosmos, and honored the importance of the female principle, Sophia, to live balanced lives. He concludes that the Catholic Church feared their power, so it killed them and banished the survivors underground. The Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in Qumran, Palestine, and the Nag Hammadi Codex, discovered in Egypt both in the 1940s, are important Gnostic texts which expose the truth about the archons. Here's a quote from the Apocryphon of John, a Nag Hammadi text. They sought to overpower humanity in its psychological and perceptual functions, although they saw the human thinking was superior to theirs. For indeed their delight is bitter, and their beauty is depraved, and their triumph is in deception, leading astray, for their own structure is without divinity. The Gnostics were postulating the idea of a predatory alien presence that took delight in others' pain and that used deception as a tool. Disconnected from their own power without divinity, they became parasites that had to hijack the energy of others to survive. Hyperdimensional entities, demons, Christianity. These same forces are called demons in the Christian tradition. In this famous quote from Ephesians 6:12, the creatures are actually called rulers and authorities, which directly echoes the language used to describe the archons in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Christianity also contains a tradition of exorcism of evil spirits. The gospel contains many stories of Jesus casting out evil spirits. This tradition continues to the current day. Father Gabriel Amorth was a former official in the Vatican who served as an exorcist for the Diocese of Rome for 30 years. He was also the founder of the International Association of Exorcists. Hyperdimensional entities, Jinn, Arabian mythology. In pre-Islamic Arabia, before the rise of the Prophet Muhammad in the 6th century CE, Arabian mythology contains references to the jinn or djinn, who were considered to be supernatural spirits and could be good or bad. Jinn is classification of a number of different types of supernatural beings. The book of evolution of the concept of the jinn from pre-Islam to Islam describes how they could appear as pure spiritual beings or angels or demons, as indicated by Ibn Manzur in Lisan al-Arab. The people of the Jahiliyyah called angels, peace be upon them, jinn, because they are invisible from sight. They could also be tangible creatures, particularly with animal-like characteristics, as stated by the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics. Were not pure spirits, for there were often represented as hairy and often as having the form of an ostrich or a snake. The book mentions 4 specific types of jinn in the pre-Islamic world. Ghoul. We get the English word ghoul from this. The ghouls were desert demons believed to rob graves and devour corpses. They seem to appear in many different forms, often animalistic. They could appear and disappear like the light of a torch. They left a physical corpse behind when killed. Thus, the poem by Tahaba Sharan. I spent the night leaning on her, waiting for the morning to see what I caught. Then I found 2 eyes in an ugly head similar to the head of a cat with a forked tongue. Salah. The difference between this and the former is not clear. They seem to be more sneaky and clever. A story exists of a one marrying and bearing human children. Possible other differences may be that they are active during the day instead of at night, or that the Silaha is female and the ghoul is male. Neither seems to be universally respected, though. Shaykh. This was a man with only half of a body, who would beat a human to death if encountered. From Al-Hids, there's a shaykh appeared to him. He had only 1 hand, 1 eye, 1 leg. They recited poetry to each other. Then they hit each other, and both of them fell dead. Shaitan. This will be explored upon below. The English word Satan is derived from this Arabic word. They were noted to being smart, cunning, powerful, and generally rebellious. Hyperdimensional entities. Shaitan, Satan, Islam. Shaitan belongs to the pre-Islamic Arabian mythology. However, there is a story that Muhammad was tricked by one, although there are debates by scholars over the historicity of this incident. Realized it and came out publicly the next day to be correct what he said. In the Quran, there is a story of Iblis, the first shaitan, who was apparently made by Allah, God, from a fire so pure that not even smoke could mar its beauty. This is interesting because references to the archons as made from smokeless fire crop up repeatedly across different traditions. Iblis refused to bow to Adam, who was, after all, a mere man made of clay. So Allah banished him from heaven. Iblis swore to take revenge on Adam, and all clay men like him. Iblis is considered the lord of all the shaitan, and is said to have gathered an army of shaitan and jinn to persecute mankind. The shaitan is described as a sweeping force and a whispering voice, visible only to donkeys who betray desperate warnings when they see it approaching. When they see approaching. This again is noteworthy since this highlights the theme that these hyperdimensional entities are outside the normal range of normal human perception, but not outside the perceptions of other creatures, such as animals like donkey or cats, and not outside the range of human perception when a person, through will, intent, or even psychedelics, expands his or her perception range. Number 5, hyperdimensional entities, hostile forces. Suri Aurobindo, the mother, Randolph Steiner. Suri Aurobindo was an Indian sage who founded Integral Yoga. He wrote about the archons using the term hostile forces. It, the adverse force, is the power that keeps up ignorance and darkness in the world. It can only be destroyed when mankind is no longer in love with ignorance and darkness. Each sadek has to push it out of contact with his being. When it is gone from him, then there will no longer be any serious difficulties in his sadhana or practice. The hostile forces are powers of darkness who are in a revolt against the light and the truth and want to keep this world under the rule of darkness and ignorance. Whenever anyone wants to reach the truth, to realize the divine, they stand in the way as much as possible. Sometimes they possess men in order to act through them. Sometimes they take birth in a human body. When their use in the play is over, they will either change or disappear or no longer seek to intervene in earth play. The mother, a woman closely associated with Suri Aurobindo and his work, talks about it here as she alludes upon a spiritual possession and demonic possession. Question: when a being is possessed by a hostile force, what becomes of his psychic? Mother: it depends on the degree of possession. Usually it is something progressive. First, there is an influence under which one comes. The second, the influence becomes permanent, and there is one part of the being which deteriorates, which is constantly under this influence and expresses it. After this, the being which has cast its influence tries to enter that part. Then usually this produces a conflict, a kind of inner battle, if one doesn't know how to resist and doesn't succeed in shaking off the hold. Then gradually the being that has seized upon a part of a person acts like an octopus and spreads its tentacles like that, slowly everywhere, and finally it is a total possession. At the moment of total possession, either the possessed person becomes completely unbalanced or he becomes a kind of monster. Randolph Steiner is known for many things, including his revolutionary ideas about education. He too was aware of the acrons. There are beings in the spiritual realms for whom anxiety and fear emanating from human beings offer welcome food. When humans have no anxiety and fear, then these creatures starve. If fear and anxiety radiates from people and they break out in panic, then these creatures find welcome nutrition and they become more and more powerful. These beings are hostile towards humanity. Everything that feeds on negative feelings, on anxiety, fear, and superstition, despair, or doubt, are in reality hostile forces in supersensible words, launching cruel attacks on human beings while they are being fed. Therefore, it is above all necessary to begin with that the person who enters the spiritual world overcomes fear, feelings of helplessness, despair, and anxiety. But these are exactly the feelings that belong to contemporary culture and materialism, because it estranges people from the spiritual world. It is especially suited to evoke happiness and fear of the unknown people, thereby calling upon the above-mentioned hostile forces against them. Hyperdimensional entities have been observed, warned about, and even fought with throughout the history of humanity by shamans, mystics, and prophets, although the way these hyperdimensional entities have been described in which cases is different. The similarities among the accounts are far more striking than the differences. Just what are these hyperdimensional entities exactly, and how do they affect you? Hyperdimensional entities: 6. Cosmic predator mud people. Shamanic a la Castaneda. Out of all the descriptions of hyperdimensional entities thus far presented, the descriptions given by Carlos Castaneda in his 12th and final book, The Active Side of Infinity, are the most disturbing for me personally. Castaneda relates what his mentor Don Juan taught him about the archons, which he called the cosmic predator and the mud shadow. We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our Lord and Master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands that we do not do so. This was an energetic fact for the sorcerers of ancient Mexico. They took us over because we are food for them, and they squeeze us with no mercy because we are their substance. Just as we rear chickens in chicken coops, the predators rear us in human coops, human arrows. Therefore, their food is always available to them. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our system of belief, our ideas of good and evil, our social mores. They are the ones who set up our hopes and expectations and dreams of success or failure. They have given us cowardice and greed. It is the predators who make us complacent in order to keep us obedient and meek and weak. The predators engaged themselves in a stupendous maneuver, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist. The maneuver from a point of view of those who suffer it. They gave us their mind. Do you hear me? The predator gave us their mind, which becomes our mind. The predator's mind is contradictory, morose, filled with the fear of being discovered any minute now. Through the mind, which, after all, is their mind, the predators inject into the lives of human beings whatever is convenient for them, and they assure, in this manner, a degree of security to act as if a buffer against their fear. The sorcerers of ancient Mexico were quite ill at ease when it came to the idea of when the predator made its appearance on Earth. They reasoned that man must have been a complete being at one point, with stupendous insights, feats of awareness that are mythological legends nowadays. And then everything seems to disappear, and we have now a sedated man. What I am saying is that what we have against us is not a simple predator. It is very smart and organized. It follows the methodical system to render us useless. Man, the magical being that he is destined to be, is no longer magical. He is an average piece of meat. The mud shadow explains the seemingly irreconcilable differences between man, the genius engineer, and man, the stupid idiot. The cosmic predator uses man as food, but in order to get the most loosh he can, he has to whip man up into negative frenzy, much as farmers fatten their chickens and cattle before killing them. Don Juan specifically explains that every man has a glowing coat of awareness upon which the predator feeds. It milks men by provoking emotional drama. So it so as to generate flashes of awareness that it then eats. In other places in the Casanita book series, Don Juan describes the mud shadow as a foreign installation and even hints that certain shamans or sorcerers have seen the creatures. Number 7, hyperdimensional entities, the evil magician. The Russian mystic George Gurdjieff echoed the same idea of man being a dulled creature, robbed of his power. Gurdjieff believed most people lived their lives in a kind of hypnotic trance or waking sleep. He illustrated this in his story of the evil magician. There was an evil magician. He lived deep in the mountains and the forests, and he had thousands of sheep. But the problem was that the sheep were afraid of the magician, because every day the sheep were seeing that one of them were being killed for his breakfast, another was being killed for his lunch. So they ran away from the magician's ranch, and it was a difficult job to find them in the vast forest. Being a magician, he used magic. He hypnotized all the sheep and suggested to them, first of all, that they are immortal and that no harm was being done to them when they were skinned, that on the contrary, it would be very good for them and even pleasant. Secondly, he suggested that the magician was a good master who loved his flock so much that he was ready to do anything in the world for them. In the third place, he suggested to them that if anything at all were going to happen to them, it was not going to happen just then. At any rate, not that day, and therefore they had no need to think about it. He then told different sheep. To some, "You are a man. You need not to be afraid. It is only the sheep who are going to be killed and eaten, not you. You are a man, just like I am." Some other sheep were told, "You are a lion. Only sheep are afraid. They escape. They were cowards. You are a lion. You should prefer to die than to run away. You don't belong to the sheep." So when they are killed, it is not your problem. They are meant to be killed. But you are the most loved of friends in the forest. In this way, he told every sheep different stories, and from the second day, the sheep stopped running away from the house. They still saw other sheep being killed and butchered, but it was not their concern. Somebody was a lion, somebody was a tiger, somebody was a man, somebody was a magician, and so forth. Nobody was a sheep except the one who was being killed. This way, without keeping servants, he managed thousands of sheep. They would go into the forest for their food, for their water, and they would come back home, believing always one thing: it is some sheep who are going to be killed, not you. You don't belong to the sheep. You are a lion, respected, honored, a friend of the great magician. The magician's problems were solved, and the sheep never ran away again. Gurdjieff believed humanity was not only like a flock of sheep, but also food for the moon, a concept which is well explained here. In the fourth way, creation proceeds outward and downward from a central point called Sun Absolute. Creation passes through multiple levels known as cosmio, or worlds, and finally reaches the level corresponding to Earth due to specific cosmic circumstances. Organic life on Earth is necessary for receiving this energy of creation and transforming this into a form that is passed further along to feed the moon, which is said to be growing. All this is seen as a natural process where organic Earth life, including man, performs a function in the cosmic organism, a little like bacteria perform a function in the human digestive system. The fact of mankind collectively being required to produce certain vibrations or energies for serving various cosmic purposes is stressed throughout the George Gurdjieff's Beelzebub tales to his grandson. So-called planetary influences cause mankind to fight wars and endure deadly events, so that a certain quota of energy release can be fulfilled and the moon fed. The ideas of predator eating our awareness, loosh, and food for the moon are all. Number 8, hyperdimensional entities. Wetiko, Native American. In slight contrast to the view of the archons as presented in the works of Castaneda, and elsewhere, the Native American Indian tradition conceived hyperdimensional entities as a mind virus, which they called Wetiko. The Wetiko is based on an unconsciousness of collective psyche. Wetiko is a master of distraction, making us look outside of ourselves and find issues and problems there, rather than looking within. We find people or groups outside of ourselves to match our projections of evil or darkness, then falsely believe the darkness is only outside of ourselves. This becomes a self-perpetuating feedback loop where we become unwitting of the Wetiko. Paul suggests that whether we look at Wetiko as a cunning enemy out to destroy us or a cheeky challenger out to prod and poke us into fuller awareness, it's a matter of perspective. Obviously, it is more empowering to view the created situations and outcomes of the mind virus as gifts rather than curses or burdens, because the former view may spur us on to become better people, while the latter may lead us to anger and hate. We do at least have that much choice, but unless we are already fully awakened or enlightened individual, we do not yet have the choice of whether to invite Wetiko into our lives or not. It is already here, and it is not going away unless every last speck of shadow is fully acknowledged. From this perception, the hyperdimensional entities are part of a single mind virus which tries to trick us at every turn, causing us to see problems in others. Psychological projection, when really the problems originate from ourselves. The list is not complete, for there are many other traditions which speak of the same basic idea. The concept of Maya in Hinduism and Samsara in Buddhism describe the state of being lost in an illusion of shadow or being led around by temptation and seduction due to archontic influence. According to Bernard Gunther, there are other references to hyperdimensional entities, lords of destiny, and the general law. But how do ETs fit into all of this? At this point, the overwhelming evidence of the existence of aliens or ETs must be mentioned, especially for the Greys and the reptilians. It is unclear where these beings are the same thing as the archons, who are not physical, or whether they are physical and therefore subject to psychic attacks by the archons, just as mankind is, though I believe the latter. There are many different whistleblowers who claim to have had physical interactions with Greys and reptilians, including Phil Schneider, Naira Isley, Nadara Duran, Barbara Lamb, and many others. There is also the idea put forth by many, such as Whitley Strieber, that hostile ETs engage in producing an alien-human hybrid race through genetic engineering, cannot physically experience Earth in their own bodies, so they appear to be trying to experience it through others. This idea suggests there is something different, non-corporeal, about these ETs, just as there undoubtedly is with the archons. They cannot quite cross dimensions. However, more research needs to be done in this area. One final note on this aspect of topic: a common theme among stories about hyperdimensional entities and reptilians is that there is some kind of channel which is opened, especially during the ritual. This channel is a two-way street. The possessing force takes over the vessel's thoughts, words, and actions to some degree, while the possessed gets to use borrowed energy and feeds or feels a dark rush or adrenaline high. The main point of this demonic possession is so that the hyperdimensional entity can cross over dimensions more easily into this world. This is very important to remember. When looking at the sick, sexual, and sacrifice satanic rituals performed by the elite at places like Bohemian Grove, David Icke's take on this: while archons can come into our reality, it takes so much energy for them to remain in our frequency that they cannot stay very long. So they have possessed the elite New World Order families, who are essentially archon families, who channel them and bring about their agenda on Earth. The British royal family, psychopathic CEOs, pedophilic leaders are expressions of the archon mentality on Earth. Beware the fake light. There is much evidence that is the archons who are behind the fake light of the New Age movement, the possible light trap at the point of death, and the ubiquitous divide and rule strategy we see everywhere in a push towards NWO. In order to capture and control the widest possible spectrum of souls, the corrupt demiurge split its agents into two seemingly opposite teams, dark versus false light. What matters most to the demiurge is what we worship it or ones of its agents, regardless if they are on the light team or dark team. The corporate demiurge is an entropic system of artificial induced separation consciousness that is slowly dying, and it depends on harvesting the energy from the souls incarnated within its system in order to preserve its existence. Okay, so I guess this is what comes through these portals, these rift portals, archons, or whatever you want to call them, entities. Could they be aliens? Possibly. Who knows? I don't. All right, guys, like I said, a lot of crazy information right there. It may be an explanation for some things that go on at Skinwalker Ranch and other places that have that kind of high strangeness around them. Guys, thank you for supporting the channel. Your support is what makes this channel special and what continues to make it grow and go. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there. They are dangerous. Share this info with those you care about, and it may help save their life someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for answers. And God bless you all.